I'm Maxwell, 34, and I need to get this out because what happened 3 months ago still keeps me up at night. Not from regret, but from the sheer satisfaction of watching everything fall into place exactly how I planned it. My wife Charlotte and I had been married for 6 years. We met when I was working as a project coordinator at a mid-sized tech firm, making decent money, but nothing spectacular. Charlotte worked in retail management, pulled in about the same as me. We lived in a modest three-bedroom house, had a Labrador named Henry that I loved more than anything, and from the outside probably looked like your average couple working toward a comfortable middle-class life. Here's what you need to know about Charlotte's mother, Deborah. She never thought I was good enough for her daughter. Never. From day one of our relationship, Deborah made it clear she expected Charlotte to marry someone wealthier, someone with more status, someone who could give her daughter the life she deserved. I heard it all. The comments about my 2015 Toyota Camry, the suggestions that Charlotte could do better, the way she'd bring up her friends' sons who were lawyers or doctors. Charlotte always defended me back then, told her mother to back off, said she loved me for who I was. I actually believed her. About 8 months ago, things started changing at work. The company landed a massive contract with a major client, and I was put in charge of the entire implementation project. It was the kind of opportunity that could make a career. My boss started talking about promoting me to senior project director, which would basically triple my salary from 65K to about 180K annually. I was excited, worked my tail off on this project, stayed late, came in on weekends. Charlotte seemed supportive, telling me how proud she was, how this was going to change everything for us. I should have paid more attention to how much time she started spending with her mother. Deborah was suddenly at our house 3 times a week instead of the usual once a month. They'd sit in the kitchen for hours, and whenever I walked in, they'd get quiet or change the subject. I figured they were planning something nice, maybe a surprise party for the promotion or something. Yeah, I was that naive. The promotion was scheduled to be announced at the end of the month. I'd already seen the preliminary paperwork, knew it was coming, was just waiting for the official board approval. 3 weeks before the announcement, I was outside the house changing a flat tire on Charlotte's car. It was a Thursday afternoon. I'd taken half a day off to handle some things around the house. The living room window was open because it was warm out, and I was directly below it, kneeling by the rear passenger tire. That's when I heard Charlotte's voice crystal clear, talking on the phone. "Mom, the lawyer says we should file right after the promotion goes through. His salary triples. I want that reflected in the settlement calculations." I froze. Actually physically froze with the lug wrench in my hand. Deborah's voice came through on speakerphone. "What about the house? You need to make sure you get the house." Charlotte laughed. "Already handled. I had him add me to the deed last year, remember? He thought it was just for estate planning purposes. The lawyer says since I've been managing all the household finances and my name is on everything, I'll get to keep it. He'll have to buy me out or I'll force a sale." My hands started shaking, but I stayed completely still. I needed to hear everything. Deborah continued. "And you're sure about the timing? Right after the promotion?" Charlotte's voice was so casual, so matter-of-fact. The lawyer was very clear. "If I file before the promotion, it's calculated on his current salary. If I file after, it's calculated on the new one. I've been married to him for 6 years, contributed to his career, supported him. I'm entitled to that increase. Plus, the longer marriage means better spousal support terms." "What about that dog?" Deborah asked. Charlotte actually giggled. "Oh, I'm keeping Henry. Maxwell loves that dog more than he loves me, honestly. It'll destroy him. But I paid for Henry's adoption fee. All the vet bills are in my name. He's registered to me. The lawyer says possession is 9/10 of the law with pets." I tightened the last lug nut very slowly, very carefully. My brain was working in this weird, super clear way. No emotion, just processing information like I was analyzing data for work. Deborah's voice got excited. "You're so smart, sweetheart. I always knew you could do better than him. Once you get the settlement money, you'll meet someone who actually deserves you." The call ended and I heard Charlotte moving around inside. I stood up, put my tools away, and went into the garage. I didn't go inside the house. I sat in my car in the garage for probably an hour, just thinking. No anger yet. Just this cold calculation running through everything I knew about our marriage, our finances, our life together. See, Charlotte had always insisted on managing our finances. Said she was better with money, better at keeping track of bills. I'd been fine with that, trusted her completely. We had a joint checking account that our paychecks went into, and she handled everything from there. I had access to all the accounts, could log in any time, but I never did because why would I? I trusted my wife. That night I logged into our bank accounts for the first time in probably 2 years. I went through everything systematically. Our joint checking, our joint savings, the investment accounts. Then I noticed something interesting. There were several transfers over the past 8 months to an account I didn't recognize. Small amounts, 200 here, 350 there. Nothing that would trigger alarm bells if you weren't looking for it. But it added up to about $8,000 total. I did some digging. The account was in Charlotte's name only. She'd been quietly moving money into a personal account I didn't know existed, building up her own separate nest egg while planning to take me for everything in the divorce. I started checking other things. Went through her emails on our shared laptop. Found extensive correspondence with her lawyer dating back 5 months. 5 months. She'd been planning this since before my promotion was even confirmed. The lawyer had outlined a whole strategy, so stay in the marriage until the promotion was finalized, and I'd been in the new position for at least 30 days to establish the higher income as standard, then file. The emails detailed exactly what she was entitled to, how to maximize her settlement, which assets to prioritize. There were emails to Deborah too, dozens of them. Her mother had been coaching her through this entire process, helping her identify what she could claim, encouraging her to hold out for the biggest possible payout. Deborah had even connected her with the lawyer, some guy who apparently specialized in maximizing settlements for wives. I found a spreadsheet Charlotte had created, titled Post-M Financial Planning. M for marriage, I guess? It had columns for different settlement scenarios, calculations of what she'd get based on different factors, even a timeline for when she'd file based on when my promotion came through. That Thursday night, I smiled at Charlotte over dinner, asked her how her day was. She smiled back, kissed my cheek, told me she loved me. I said it back. I went to bed next to her, and I started planning. First thing Friday morning, I called a lawyer of my own. Not just any lawyer, I found the most aggressive divorce attorney in the state, guy with a reputation for absolutely destroying opponents in court. I paid the $5,000 retainer with a credit card Charlotte didn't know about, one I'd opened years ago for work expenses and never closed. I told him everything, showed him the emails, the bank transfers, the spreadsheet. He actually smiled. "Maxwell," he said, "she's been planning this divorce as a business transaction. We're going to make sure she gets exactly what she legally deserves. Nothing more, nothing less, and I promise you it won't be what she's expecting." Here's what I learned. Charlotte's strategy was solid if I didn't know about it. But since I did, we could flip it completely. The separate bank account? That's her separate property she'd been hiding. The fact that my name was on the house first and she was added later? That matters. The extensive planning and calculation shows premeditation and strategic manipulation. Every email to her lawyer discussing how to maximize what she could take from me? Evidence of her intentions. My lawyer filed first. That Monday morning, before Charlotte even woke up, I had her served with divorce papers at her workplace. Not at home, where she could control the narrative, but at her job in front of her coworkers and manager. The look on her face when she got home that night was almost worth everything by itself. She came in screaming about how I'd humiliated her. How could I do this? What was I thinking? I just looked at her calmly and said I knew about her plan. All of it. The lawyer meetings, the timing strategy, the conversations with her mother about taking me for everything I had. She actually tried to deny it at first. Then she tried to spin it, saying she was just protecting herself, that I'd been distant, that she had every right to consult a lawyer. I didn't argue. I just told her I wanted her out of the house by the end of the week. That's when Deborah got involved. Update 1. Thanks for all the comments on my original post. Some of you suggested I just walk away and let karma handle it. Yeah, no, that's not happening. Others said I should expose everything publicly. Getting there. Let me tell you what's been happening since I dropped the divorce bomb. So Deborah showed up at the house the night after Charlotte got served. I'd just gotten home from work when her car pulled into the driveway. Charlotte had been staying in the guest room since Monday, refusing to leave despite my request. She came out of that room the second she heard her mother's voice. Deborah walked in like she owned the place. Didn't even knock. Started immediately with how dare I embarrass her daughter at work. How dare I file for divorce without even trying to work things out. How I was being cruel and vindictive. I just stood there in the kitchen and let her go on for probably 5 minutes straight. Charlotte was behind her, arms crossed, looking at me like I was the villain in this whole situation. When Deborah finally stopped to breathe, I asked her if Charlotte had told her that I knew everything. The planning, the timing, the strategy to wait for my promotion. Deborah's face did this interesting thing where she tried to look confused, but I could see she knew exactly what I was talking about. She asked what I meant, and I said I'd heard Charlotte's phone conversation with her, the one where they discussed waiting until after my salary tripled to file. Charlotte jumped in then, telling her mother I was twisting things, that she'd just been protecting herself, that I'd been acting strange for months, and she had every right to consult with a lawyer about her options. I actually laughed at that one. Protecting herself by calculating exactly how much she could take from me based on different timing scenarios? Protecting herself by moving money into a secret account? By planning to keep Henry just to hurt me? That's when Deborah switched tactics. She said Charlotte had been unhappy for years, that I never appreciated her, that I was always focused on work and ignored my wife. Charlotte nodded along, adding that I'd changed, that the promotion had made me obsessed with my career, that she'd felt alone in the marriage. I asked Charlotte which was it. Had I been terrible for years, or did I just recently change when the promotion came up? She couldn't answer that without contradicting herself. I told them both I wanted Charlotte out by Friday. Deborah said Charlotte had every right to stay in the house, that it was her home too, that I couldn't just kick her out. I explained that actually, since I'd filed first and had documentation of her planning to use the marital home as a strategic asset in divorce proceedings, my lawyer was filing a motion for exclusive use and possession of the property. Charlotte could fight it in court if she wanted, but the hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Charlotte started crying. Real tears, the kind that used to make me want to fix whatever was wrong. She said she had nowhere to go, that I was being heartless, that she never wanted any of this. I reminded her that she'd been planning this exact divorce for 5 months. She shot back that planning and wanting were different things, that she'd been scared and unsure, that talking to a lawyer didn't mean she'd decided anything. Deborah cut in and said Charlotte could stay with her. Then she looked at me and said I'd regret this, that I was making a huge mistake, that Charlotte's lawyer was going to destroy me in court. I told her I looked forward to it, that I'd be happy to present all of Charlotte's emails and planning documents to the judge. The spreadsheet titled Post-M Financial Planning would probably be particularly interesting. Both of their faces went completely still. Charlotte asked how I got her emails. I explained that they were on our shared laptop, the one we'd both used for years, and that there was no expectation of privacy for emails accessed on a joint computer in a shared marital home. My lawyer had confirmed this. Everything I'd found was completely admissible. Charlotte turned on her mother then, started saying this was all Deborah's idea, that her mother had pushed her to see a lawyer, that she'd just been venting about normal marriage stress and Deborah had blown it up into this whole divorce strategy. Deborah immediately denied it, said Charlotte had come to her upset and asking for advice, that she'd only been trying to help her daughter protect herself from a husband who was clearly becoming someone she didn't recognize. I left them arguing in my kitchen and went upstairs to my office. I could hear them going back and forth for another hour, Charlotte blaming her mother for pushing her into this, Deborah insisting she'd only wanted what was best for Charlotte. Eventually, Deborah left. Charlotte stayed in the guest room. The next morning, Tuesday, Charlotte tried a different approach. She'd made breakfast, had coffee waiting for me, was dressed nicely. She said she wanted to talk, really talk about what was happening. I sat down because honestly, I wanted to hear what she could possibly say at this point. She started with apologies, said she'd been wrong to plan behind my back, that she'd been scared of the changes coming with my promotion, that her mother had gotten in her head. She said she loved me, that she didn't want a divorce, that we could work through this if I would just call my lawyer and put everything on hold. She reached across the table and took my hand, did that thing where she'd rub her thumb over my knuckles that used to make me melt. I asked her about the separate bank account. She said it was her emergency fund, that she'd been taught growing up to always have her own money just in case. I asked about the $8,000 she'd transferred there. She said it was from her bonuses at work, her personal earnings that she had every right to save. I pointed out that our marriage was in a community property state, meaning there was no such thing as her bonuses. All income earned during the marriage was marital property, and hiding it was actually a problem. She got defensive then, said I was being ridiculous, that she wasn't hiding anything, that it was normal for people to have their own accounts. I agreed it was normal if both spouses knew about all the accounts. The secret part was the issue. She said she'd told me about it, that I just never listened to anything she said anymore. I asked her when specifically she'd told me. She couldn't provide a date or even a general time frame. I brought up the emails to her lawyer. She said those were just consultations, that she had every right to understand her legal position without it meaning she'd decided to divorce me. I asked if discussing the optimal timing to file for maximum financial benefits seemed like just understanding her position, or if it seemed like active planning. She said I was twisting everything, that I'd clearly already made up my mind about her, that there was no point talking to someone who'd already decided she was the villain. I told her she'd made herself the villain by spending 5 months calculating how to maximize what she could take from me. She said I was making her sound like some kind of gold digger, when really she'd just been trying to protect herself in case things went wrong. I asked her why she thought things would go wrong. She couldn't answer that either. We'd been fine, or so I'd thought, until I found out she'd been planning to leave me the entire time I was working to provide a better life for us. Charlotte started crying again. said this wasn't who she was, that she'd made mistakes, but they didn't define her, that she wanted to fight for our marriage. She asked if I remembered when we first met, how happy we'd been, all the plans we'd made for our future. I said I remembered that person. I didn't recognize who she'd become. She grabbed my hands tighter and said she was still that person, that she could be that person again if I'd just give her a chance. She said we could go to counseling, that we could work through whatever had broken between us, that 6 years of marriage had to count for something. I asked if it had counted for something when she was planning to take Henry just to hurt me. She let go of my hands. Thursday afternoon, my boss called me into his office. The promotion was officially approved, effective the following Monday. I'd be starting at the new salary, new title, new responsibilities. He congratulated me, said the board had been impressed with my work, that they saw real leadership potential. I thanked him, took the paperwork, and went back to my desk. I called my lawyer immediately and told him. He said it was good timing, that Charlotte's lawyer would probably try to use the promotion against me now, claim I'd been hiding it or accelerating the divorce to avoid including the higher income. I told him I had emails proving I'd been excited about the promotion and talking to Charlotte about it for months. He said that was perfect. Keep everything documented. That night, Charlotte was waiting when I got home. She'd clearly been crying for a while. She said her lawyer had called, that my lawyer had submitted the evidence package to the court. All her emails, the planning documents, the bank account information, everything. Her lawyer told her it looked bad, really bad, that the judge was going to see clear premeditation and strategic manipulation. Charlotte's position had gone from strong to defensive in one filing. She asked me why I was doing this to her. Actually asked me that, like I was the one who'd planned to ambush her with divorce papers timed to maximize my financial loss. I reminded her that she'd spent 5 months doing exactly what I was now defending myself against. She said it was different, that she'd never actually filed, that planning wasn't the same as doing. I said the only reason she hadn't filed yet was because she was waiting for my promotion to finalize. She was only upset because I'd discovered her plan before she could execute it. Charlotte switched tactics again. Said fine. If I wanted a divorce, we'd do it fairly. Split everything down the middle, both walk away clean. I asked her what happened to wanting to work on the marriage. She said clearly I'd already decided that wasn't an option, so we should at least end things civilly. I told her my lawyer would present her proposal to me. She asked why we needed lawyers for a simple split. I said because 3 days ago she'd been planning to take me for everything I had, and I wasn't stupid enough to trust her now. She called me paranoid, said I was being cruel and vindictive over things she'd thought about but never actually done. I asked if she'd actually planned to keep Henry or if that was just a thought too. She went quiet. Then she said she'd been angry when she said that her mother had suggested it, that she never would have actually taken him from me. I didn't believe her. Friday morning, Charlotte started packing. I stayed home from work to make sure she actually left. Deborah showed up with her SUV to help move boxes. Neither of them spoke to me the entire time they were loading up Charlotte's things. Well, that's not entirely true. As Charlotte was carrying the last box out, she stopped and told me I'd changed, that the Maxwell she married would never have done this to her. I said the Charlotte I married would never have plotted to destroy me financially. She didn't have a response to that. They left around 2 p.m. The house felt incredibly empty. Henry was confused, kept going to the guest room looking for Charlotte, then coming back to me when she wasn't there. I sat on the couch and texted my lawyer that she was out of the house. He said good, that it strengthened our position for the Tuesday hearing. Saturday, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Deborah. She said I was making the biggest mistake of my life, that Charlotte loved me, and I was throwing away a good woman over nothing. I didn't respond. She sent another text an hour later saying Charlotte was devastated, that she was at Deborah's house crying constantly, that she'd never seen her daughter so heartbroken. Still didn't respond. Sunday morning, Charlotte started texting me directly. Long messages about how she couldn't sleep, how she kept thinking about our life together, how she couldn't believe this was happening. She said her lawyer had advised her that the evidence I'd submitted was really damaging her case, that she might end up with much less than she'd been told she could get. She asked if that made me happy, destroying her like this. I responded for the first time, told her she'd tried to destroy me first, she just got caught before she could execute her plan. She sent back that she never tried to destroy me, that I was being dramatic, that looking into her options wasn't the same as actually going through with it. I said her lawyer would have to argue that point to the judge. She stopped texting after that. Monday, I started my new position. New office, new responsibilities, new salary showing up in the direct deposit. My assistant congratulated me, brought me coffee, told me the team was excited to work with me. It felt good, I'm not going to lie. Everything I'd worked for was finally happening, except now I was doing it alone and in the middle of a divorce. Tuesday was the hearing for exclusive use of the house. Charlotte showed up with her lawyer, some guy in an expensive suit who looked extremely confident until my lawyer started presenting evidence. The judge reviewed the planning documents, the emails, Charlotte's own written timeline for when to file. Then my lawyer brought up the separate bank account and the transfers Charlotte had made without my knowledge. Charlotte's lawyer tried to argue she had every right to manage her own earnings. My lawyer countered that those weren't her earnings, they were marital funds transferred to a hidden account while she was simultaneously planning divorce strategy. The judge asked Charlotte directly when she'd opened the separate account. She said about a year ago. The judge asked if I'd known about it. She admitted I hadn't. The judge granted me exclusive use and possession of the marital home. Charlotte had 30 days to collect any remaining personal items under supervised conditions, but she couldn't live there or claim any current interest in the property until the divorce was finalized and assets were properly divided. Charlotte's face went completely white. Her lawyer asked for a continuance to present additional evidence. The judge denied it. We walked out of that courthouse and Charlotte just stood there on the steps. Her lawyer was talking to her, but she wasn't responding, just staring at nothing. I got in my car and drove back to work, texted my lawyer thanking him. He said this was just the beginning, that we needed to prepare for the full divorce proceedings. But we'd won an important early battle. That night, Deborah called me. Actually called, not texted. I almost didn't answer, but decided I wanted to hear what she had to say. She started immediately yelling about how I'd humiliated her daughter in court, how I'd taken Charlotte's home away from her, how I was a vindictive, cruel man who'd shown his true colors. I let her go on for about 2 minutes. Then, I asked her if she'd helped Charlotte plan the timing of the divorce. She said that was none of my business. I said it actually was very much my business since it was my marriage and my income she'd been plotting about. Deborah said she'd only been helping her daughter protect herself from a man who clearly didn't value her anymore. I asked her when exactly I'd stopped valuing Charlotte. She couldn't give me a specific answer, just vague statements about how I'd changed and become obsessed with work. I pointed out that Charlotte had started her divorce planning before I'd even gotten intense about the promotion project, so that excuse didn't track. Deborah said Charlotte had seen the writing on the wall, had known I'd leave her behind once I got successful. I said that was interesting since Charlotte had never mentioned any concerns to me, just secretly started preparing to take everything I had. Deborah called me paranoid, said I was twisting a mother helping her daughter into some kind of conspiracy. I said it was a conspiracy when you spend months coaching someone on how to strategically time a divorce for maximum financial benefit. She said she didn't have to listen to this and hung up. I sat in my empty house with Henry and realized this was going to get much worse before it got better. Update 2. Quick update for everyone following this mess. To the commenter who said I should just take the high road and move on. Respectfully, no. Charlotte spent 5 months strategically planning to financially destroy me, and I'm not going to pretend that deserves a dignified response. The week after the hearing, Charlotte's lawyer filed a motion challenging my exclusive use of the house. Their argument was that I'd forced her out through intimidation and that she had nowhere else to go. My lawyer submitted the text messages from Deborah saying Charlotte was staying with her, plus receipts showing Deborah's house was a 4-bedroom in a nice neighborhood, so clearly Charlotte wasn't homeless. Motion denied. Then Charlotte started with the social media posts. Nothing directly about me or the divorce, just vague stuff about betrayal and finding out who people really are when things get hard. Posts about loyalty and trust with crying emojis. Her friends were commenting with supportive messages, asking if she was okay, telling her she deserved better. I didn't respond or react to any of it. Just screenshotted everything and sent it to my lawyer in case it became relevant. What I didn't expect was for Charlotte's friends to start contacting me. 3 different women I barely knew, all messaging me on various platforms asking what happened, saying Charlotte was devastated, wanting to know my side of things. I gave them all the same response. This was between Charlotte and me. I wasn't discussing my marriage on social media, and they should ask Charlotte for details if they were that concerned. One of them, someone named Elaine, who I'd met maybe twice at Charlotte's work events, actually told me that Charlotte had said I'd blindsided her with divorce papers out of nowhere, that I'd gotten the promotion and immediately decided I was too good for her. This woman had the nerve to call me shallow and tell me Charlotte deserved someone who'd appreciate her. I sent her screenshots of exactly 3 things. Charlotte's email to her lawyer, discussing timing the divorce for maximum settlement, the spreadsheet calculating what she'd get based on my new salary, and the message where she told Deborah she was keeping Henry just to hurt me. Elaine didn't respond. But the social media posts from Charlotte's friends got a lot quieter after that. I'm guessing Elaine shared what I'd sent her. Charlotte texted me the next day, absolutely furious. Said I had no right to share private information with her friends, that I was trying to turn people against her, that I was ruining her reputation. I pointed out that she'd already been sharing her version of events, so I was just providing context. She said that was different, that she was hurt and reaching out for support while I was deliberately trying to destroy her socially. I asked her if she'd told her friends the truth about why I filed. She said she'd told them we'd grown apart and I'd changed. I asked if she'd mentioned the 5 months of divorce planning. She said that was taken out of context, that she'd been confused and scared, and exploring options didn't mean she'd actually decided anything. I reminded her that her emails specifically discussed waiting for the promotion to finalize so the settlement would be calculated on my higher salary. She said I was being deliberately cruel by focusing on her worst moments instead of remembering the good years we'd had together. That conversation went nowhere. She wanted me to admit I was being vindictive. I wanted her to take responsibility for betraying me. Neither of us was willing to give the other what they wanted. 2 days later, my parents called. They'd gotten a call from Deborah. My mother was upset, wanted to know what was happening with my marriage, why no one had told them I was getting divorced. I'd been avoiding telling my parents because I knew it would be complicated, but apparently Deborah had decided to force the issue. I drove over to their house that Saturday, sat down with both of them, and explained everything from the beginning. The conversation I'd overheard, the planning documents I'd found, the separate bank account, all of it. My father got really quiet, the way he does when he's processing something serious. My mother kept asking if I was sure, if maybe I'd misunderstood. If Charlotte and I had tried counseling. I showed them the emails, the spreadsheet, the timeline Charlotte had created for when to file based on my promotion schedule. My mother's face changed as she read through everything. She'd always liked Charlotte, had been excited when we got married, thought we were a good match. Seeing the evidence of Charlotte's planning in black and white was hard for her. My father asked what Deborah had told them. I said I didn't know. My mother said Deborah had called very upset, saying I'd thrown Charlotte out of her home, that I'd changed since getting the promotion and had become cruel and controlling, that I was trying to take everything from Charlotte in the divorce and leave her with nothing. Deborah had apparently cried on the phone, said she was worried about her daughter's well-being, asked if my parents could talk some sense into me. I asked if they believed her. My father said he'd wanted to hear my side before making any judgments, which was why they'd called. My mother admitted she'd been inclined to believe Deborah at first because she'd seemed so genuinely distressed, but after seeing the evidence, she understood why I'd filed. She asked if there was any chance Charlotte and I could work things out. I told her Charlotte had spent 5 months calculating how to maximize what she could take from me. There was no coming back from that level of betrayal. My father said he supported my decision and asked if I needed help with anything. I told him I was fine, had a good lawyer, was handling everything. My mother hugged me and said she was sorry this was happening. I left feeling better about at least having my parents understand the situation. Monday morning, I got a call from my lawyer. Charlotte's lawyer had submitted a new proposal. Charlotte would agree to a 50-50th split of all marital assets, no spousal support from either party, and shared custody of Henry with alternating weeks. My lawyer asked what I thought. I said no. Charlotte could have had that deal if she'd just filed for divorce honestly, instead of spending months strategizing how to take me for everything. My lawyer said we could probably get a better deal than 50-50ths given the evidence of her planning and the separate account, but it would mean dragging the divorce out longer. I told him I wanted to drag it out. I wanted depositions, discovery, the whole process. I wanted Charlotte to have to answer questions under oath about every email, every conversation with her mother, every dollar she'd transferred to that secret account. He said that would be expensive for both sides. I said I didn't care. I had the new salary now, I could afford it. Charlotte was still making her retail management income and paying her own legal fees out of that. Time was on my side financially. He said he'd reject the proposal and prepare for full discovery. Charlotte called me that night screaming. Her lawyer had told her I'd rejected the settlement offer. She wanted to know why I was doing this, why I was dragging things out, why I couldn't just split everything fairly and move on. I told her she'd had 5 months to file fairly and chose not to. She said she'd never actually filed, that intentions didn't count, that I was punishing her for thoughts she'd had. I said her thoughts were documented in detailed emails and spreadsheets, so yes, I was going to hold her accountable for them. She said I was wasting both our money on lawyers. I said she should have thought of that before hiring a lawyer to strategize her divorce 5 months before filing. She said her lawyer had told her she had a strong case for spousal support given the length of the marriage and the difference in our incomes now. I said her lawyer had probably also told her that the evidence of premeditation and strategic planning severely damaged that case. She hung up on me. Deborah started showing up at my workplace. First time was Wednesday afternoon. I came out to the parking lot and she was standing by my car. She said we needed to talk, that this had gone too far, that Charlotte was barely eating or sleeping, and I was destroying her. I asked Deborah if she'd helped Charlotte plan the timing of the divorce. She said she'd only given Charlotte advice, that mothers help their daughters, that it was her job to protect Charlotte. I asked her if telling Charlotte to wait until after my promotion counted as protection or strategy. She said Charlotte had needed to know her options, that she'd wanted to make sure her daughter was taken care of if the marriage ended. I pointed out that our marriage wouldn't have ended if Charlotte hadn't been planning to end it. Deborah said I'd pushed Charlotte to this by becoming someone she didn't recognize. I asked when specifically that had happened. She said over the past year I'd become obsessed with work and status and had stopped caring about my wife. I reminded her that Charlotte had started her divorce planning before my promotion project had even intensified, so that timeline didn't make sense. Deborah said she didn't have to justify anything to me, that I'd shown my true character by how I was treating Charlotte now. I told her she was no longer welcome at my workplace, and if she came back, I'd report her for harassment. She called me heartless and left. The following week, Charlotte came to the house to get more of her things. My lawyer had arranged supervised access, which meant I had to be there while she collected items. She showed up with Deborah and 2 large suitcases. I let them in and followed them upstairs to our bedroom. Charlotte started going through the closet, pulling out clothes and shoes. Deborah was helping her pack, making comments about how Charlotte shouldn't take anything she didn't absolutely need because clearly I was going to fight over every little thing. I didn't respond. Charlotte found a box of photos from our wedding and early years together. She sat on the bed looking through them, tears running down her face. She asked if I remembered our honeymoon. I said yes. She asked if I remembered how happy we'd been. I said I remembered thinking we were happy. She looked up at me and said we had been happy, that those years were real, that what she'd done didn't erase all of that. I told her she'd erased it herself when she decided our marriage was worth less than the settlement she could get from ending it. Charlotte said she'd never thought of it that way, that she'd been scared and overwhelmed, and her mother had made it seem like planning ahead was just being smart. Deborah cut in then, saying Charlotte didn't need to explain herself to me, that I'd clearly already decided she was the villain, and nothing she said would change that. Charlotte told her mother to stop helping, which actually surprised both of us. Then Charlotte looked at me and said she wished I'd just talked to her when I found out, wished I'd given her a chance to explain before filing. I asked what she would have explained. She said she didn't know, that maybe she would have realized how wrong she'd been, that maybe we could have worked it out. I told her I didn't believe that. She'd spent 5 months meticulously planning this divorce. That wasn't confusion or fear, that was calculated strategy. She said people do crazy things when they're scared. I asked what she'd been scared of. She said she'd been scared I'd leave her once I got successful, that she'd end up with nothing after giving her best years to our marriage. I pointed out that she'd been actively planning to leave me, not the other way around. She said that was different, that she'd been protecting herself from what she thought was inevitable. I said if she'd actually believed I'd leave her, she wouldn't have needed to strategically time the divorce for maximum financial benefit. She would have just left. Charlotte didn't have an answer for that. Deborah said I was confusing her daughter, that I was twisting everything Charlotte said to make her sound bad. I said Charlotte's own emails made her sound bad. I didn't need to add anything. We stood there in uncomfortable silence for probably a full minute before Charlotte went back to packing. She asked about Henry. I said Henry was staying with me. She said she wanted visitation. I said Henry was a dog, not a child, and she could discuss pet custody with her lawyer if she wanted. She started crying harder. Said I knew how much Henry meant to her. I reminded her that her plan had been to keep Henry specifically because she knew it would hurt me. She said she'd never really meant that she'd just been upset and saying things. I asked if she'd been upset for the entire 5 months she was planning this divorce or just during specific conversations. Deborah told Charlotte they should go, that I was clearly enjoying being cruel. Charlotte gathered her things and they left. I sat on my bed in the bedroom I'd shared with my wife for 6 years and tried to figure out how we'd gotten here. That night, I got a long text from Charlotte. She said she was sorry, that she'd made terrible choices, that she'd let her mother influence her too much, that she understood why I was angry, but she wished I could see that she'd never actually wanted to hurt me. She said she still loved me, and she was willing to do whatever it took to fix this if I'd give her a chance. I didn't respond, because even if part of me wanted to believe her, I couldn't forget that she'd spent 5 months doing math on how much she could take from me. That wasn't love. That was a business transaction, and I was done being the one who got played. Final update. For everyone who's been following this disaster, here's how it ended. And yeah, to the people who said I was being too harsh, you can skip this update because you're not going to like how this turned out. The discovery process was brutal. Charlotte had to sit for a deposition where my lawyer went through every single email, every conversation with her lawyer, every dollar in that separate account. She tried to maintain that she'd just been exploring options, that planning wasn't the same as committing. My lawyer asked her to explain the spreadsheet with different financial scenarios based on timing. She said she'd been trying to understand her situation. He asked why she needed to understand her situation if she hadn't decided to divorce me. She couldn't give a coherent answer. Then he asked about specific emails. The one where she told her lawyer she wanted the settlement calculated on my post-promotion salary. The one where she discussed keeping Henry to hurt me. The one where she and Deborah laughed about me signing paperwork without reading it. Charlotte cried through most of it, said things were being taken out of context, that she'd been confused and scared. My lawyer asked if she'd been confused and scared for 5 straight months. She said yes. He asked why she hadn't talked to me about her concerns if she was so confused and scared. She said she'd been afraid I'd leave her. He pointed out that according to her own emails, she'd been planning to leave me, not the other way around. She said that was different. He asked her to explain how. She said she needed to protect herself. He asked from what? She said from ending up with nothing after 6 years of marriage. He reminded her that a 50-50th split would have given her something. But according to her planning documents, she'd been trying to get significantly more than that. She didn't have a response. The deposition transcript was probably the most damaging thing in the whole case. Watching Charlotte try to explain away 5 months of calculated planning while under oath made it very clear she'd been strategic, not scared. Her lawyer tried to suppress parts of it, claiming emotional distress, but the judge wasn't having it. Deborah got pulled into discovery too. My lawyer wanted to know exactly what role she'd played in Charlotte's planning. Deborah tried to claim attorney-client privilege, which obviously didn't apply since she wasn't Charlotte's lawyer. She had to answer questions about her conversations with Charlotte, her advice on timing, her involvement in finding and coaching Charlotte through the lawyer consultation process. Deborah admitted she'd told Charlotte to wait until after my promotion, said it was just common sense financial planning. My lawyer asked if encouraging your daughter to strategically time a divorce to maximize settlement money counted as financial planning or manipulation. Deborah said she'd been protecting her daughter's interests. He asked if those interests included taking as much from me as possible. She said Charlotte deserved to be compensated for the years she'd invested in our marriage. He pointed out that I'd also invested years in the same marriage, but somehow I wasn't entitled to strategically extract maximum value from ending it. The whole process took 4 months. 4 months of lawyers, depositions, document reviews, court appearances. Charlotte's legal fees were eating up her savings and her income. She'd had to take out a loan to keep paying her lawyer. Meanwhile, I was making my new salary and could afford to keep the process going as long as necessary. Charlotte tried multiple times to settle. Her lawyer submitted 3 different proposals, each one less favorable to her than the last. The final proposal was basically asking for a straight 50-50th split with no spousal support and no claim to Henry. My lawyer said we should take it, that we'd proven our point, and dragging it out further was just running up costs for both sides. I said no. I wanted a judgment, not a settlement. I wanted a judge to look at all the evidence and rule on exactly what Charlotte was entitled to after spending 5 months calculating how to take me for everything I had. We went to trial. It was only 2 days, but it felt longer. Charlotte's lawyer tried to paint her as a scared wife who'd been exploring her options in a difficult marriage. My lawyer presented the emails, the timeline, the spreadsheet, the deposition testimony, all of it. He argued that Charlotte had been engaged in strategic manipulation of the divorce process before ever filing, and that her conduct showed clear bad faith. The judge reviewed everything. Then he made his ruling. Because Charlotte had hidden marital funds in a separate account, the court awarded me a credit for the full amount she'd transferred plus half of what remained in the account. Because she'd added her name to the house deed under false pretenses, telling me it was for estate planning when she was actually preparing for divorce, the house was awarded to me with no buyout requirement. Because she'd planned to use Henry as leverage against me, and because Henry had been primarily my responsibility during the marriage, I retained full ownership with no visitation requirement for the remaining marital assets, vehicles, furniture, shared accounts. We got an exactly 50-50th split, no spousal support for either party, each responsible for our own legal fees. Charlotte's face when the judge read that ruling was something I'll remember forever. She'd gone into this planning to get the house, half my new income and support payments, a significant portion of my retirement accounts, and Henry. She walked away with half the furniture, her car, and a massive legal bill. Her lawyer immediately filed an appeal. My lawyer said appeals rarely succeeded in divorce cases unless there was a clear error of law. And there wasn't one here. The judge had followed the evidence and made reasonable rulings based on Charlotte's documented conduct. 3 months later, the appeal was denied. The divorce was finalized 6 months after I'd first filed. Charlotte had spent probably $40,000 in legal fees, fighting for a settlement she'd never gotten. I'd spent about the same, but I had my house, my dog, and my new salary to cover it. Charlotte was broke, living with Deborah, and working the same retail management job she'd had throughout our marriage. The social consequences hit Charlotte harder than the financial ones. Word got around about why we'd divorced. Not because I spread it. I didn't have to. Court proceedings are public record, and some of Charlotte's friends had apparently looked up the case files after I'd sent those screenshots to Elaine. They'd seen the evidence, the deposition transcripts, the planning documents. Charlotte's carefully maintained image of being the wronged wife fell apart when people realized she'd been strategically plotting to take me for everything months before I'd known there was a problem. Her friend group fractured. Some people stuck by her, said everyone makes mistakes, that she'd been scared and hadn't actually gone through with the worst of her plans. Others cut her off entirely, said they couldn't trust someone who'd spent months calculating how to financially destroy their spouse. Charlotte lost her position in several social groups she'd been part of. She stopped posting on social media entirely after someone commented on one of her vague posting sessions asking if she was still playing victim after what she'd tried to do to me. Deborah's reputation took a hit too. Some of her friends heard about her role in coaching Charlotte through the divorce strategy. The ones who'd been through divorces themselves apparently had strong opinions about a mother-in-law actively helping their daughter plot against a spouse. Deborah got dropped from a few social circles and stopped hosting the big family gatherings she'd been known for. Turns out people didn't want to be around someone who'd spent months helping orchestrate a strategic divorce takedown. Charlotte tried to contact me a few times after everything was finalized. Long texts about how sorry she was, how she wished she'd done things differently, how she hoped we could at least be civil. I never responded. There was nothing left to say. She'd shown me exactly who she was when she thought I'd never find out, and I wasn't interested in pretending that person deserved my civility. Deborah tried once too, about 3 months after the final judgment. She left a voicemail saying she'd been trying to protect her daughter, that she hoped I could understand that as a parent someday, that she never meant for things to go the way they did. I deleted it without calling back. I kept the house, kept Henry, kept my new job and my new salary, lived my life without someone calculating how to take it all from me. Some of Charlotte's friends asked mutual acquaintances if I ever felt guilty about how hard Charlotte's life became after the divorce. The answer was no. Charlotte made choices. She chose to plan a strategic divorce. She chose to hide money. She chose to plot with her mother for months about how to maximize what she could take from me. She chose to keep those plans going even as I worked overtime to earn a promotion that was supposed to benefit both of us. Every single consequence she faced came directly from her own documented actions. The promotion I'd worked so hard for ended up being exactly what I'd hoped. I built a good team, delivered successful projects, earned respect in my new role. Coming home to my house with my dog, not having to wonder if the person I loved was calculating how to destroy me, turned out to be worth more than any marriage that had been a lie for 5 months. People ask if I learned anything from this. Yeah, I learned that when someone shows you who they really are through their private actions and planning, you should believe them. I learned that trust, once completely broken, can't be rebuilt just because someone regrets getting caught. I learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is refuse to be understanding about betrayal. Charlotte got exactly what she'd planned to give me if I'd never found out about her strategy, nothing. And sitting here in my house with Henry asleep on the couch next to me, I can honestly say I tightened that last lug nut on her tire, heard her whole plan through that window, and made the single best decision of my life.